It's really great to be here. I actually got to build a little bit. There, things happen fast, right? So what Caitlin provided you is actually my second biography at Ben & Jerry's. I actually have a first section. So overall, I've been with Ben & Jerry's for about 30 years and 23 full-time. So I actually was with Ben & Jerry's during the growth years as the PR and communications director, but I left and I came back, and I've been back for 13 years. Now here's another story that I wasn't going to tell, but since you're telling stories and they're kind of quirky, and Ben & Jerry's is kind of quirky, I actually went to Vermont. I was at a party in West Vale, Colorado. I was young, in my wanderlust years. I didn't know where I was going next, and all the friends at the party said, "Where are you going next?" And there was a dartboard in the kitchen and a map over here, pre-internet time, and I said, "Let's put the map up on the dartboard, and I'll throw a dart, and wherever it hits, I'll go there." And it hit Vermont. Never been there. And they said, "You going?" And I said, "Tomorrow morning." I went to Vermont and I said, I was in a 1964 Chevy Squareback that was painted red, white, and blue because it was the year 1977 and the year before was the bicentennial. So of course. So I slept in the parking lot of the University of Vermont that night. And I swear, a little Vermont fairy sprinkled dust on me. And I've never left. So I went there for the weekend, and it's still not Monday. Anyways, oh, and a click or two. All this and a click or two. And actually, one last thing. Back then, I had this 1965 Dodge van that it was copper, and it never worked. So it broke down one day. This is 1977, the fall of 1977. So I'm hitchhiking back out to where I lived, which is actually farm country. Now it's an exurb of Burlington, but it was farm country then. And this old Volvo comes driving down the road and pulls over, and I look in. A little sketchy, but looked okay. I get in, and I said, "I'm going out to Williston." And the guy says, "I'll give you a ride." And I thought, what a great day this is, because Williston took 3 rides, and now I've only got 1, so things are working out. Guy asked me, he said, "What do you do for a living?" I said, "I'm a freelancer," which meant no job. I said, "What do you do for a living?" And he said, "Well, my buddy Ben and I just bought this gas station." It was Jerry. And so cosmic serendipity, this is not what I would, for any career planning, this is not necessarily what I would suggest. But anyways, what they did was, point this way, point that way, go this way, go that way. Okay, oh, I forgot, we're at a pet. I gotta tell you, one of the things I love about this gathering is I have found a community that I think 2 of the most friendliest people in the world are pet people and Canadians. And we've got some both here, so I'm feeling really good. Just about pets in our family, this is Chowder and Grandpa. Can you see Grandpa? Right there. There he is. Okay. All right, Chowder is a great dog. We named him Chowder because he looks like New England clam chowder. Now this is Chowder with Mooney. I don't know if you can see Mooney. Mooney's right there. Okay. Mooney has just left this universe for another universe. We had to say goodbye to her. She was like Jabba the Hutt. She was the queen of the roost. And she ruled Fog. Fog is Fog because Fog's mysterious. You never really see her. And she's got that kind of cloudy thing, but she's also a great hunter. So we have been very careful about birds and all that, so we take care of Fog. That's Pinksy. Pinksy gets in trouble. There she is in a glass bowl. And this is the new, since Mooney left us, we had to bring somebody else in. This is Astrid. I call her Asteroid because she's a kitten, and she just bombs around the place. And this is Spike, the sage. Spike came to us, it's kind of like a rescue lizard. I'm not really into creatures and things. So we let Spike out, and Spike roams around and all that kind of stuff. But Spike is definitely a sage member of the universe. So this is part of our family. We also have a rooster who crows at any time of the day and night, and about 5 chickens. Now, they're not really pets, but they do have names. So are they? All right, so today, what are we going to learn today? It's always, actually, we are always thrilled to be invited to these kinds of things because there's so much going on in business now. Businesses are really much more purpose-driven, which is great. This is what we wanted to see over time. And what I want to share with you today is a little bit of history and context. I'm not going to go too deep, but I want to provide a context because I think it's important. Some of you are either small businesses or big businesses or medium businesses. You're either young or kind of intermediate or getting into your senior years. But what I hope is with this presentation, there's something in there that you can take, and I'm going to build. Now the thing is what I've learned, and being with Ben and Jerry's, and what we've learned as a community is, you got to keep learning all the time. You never have it down. It's never perfect. And don't let the perfect get in the way of the good. You've heard these kind of things. But it's really important to learn your lessons continually every day. And then once you learn your lessons, put it into the work that you're doing. Now, we talk about sustainability, and we use the word sustainability at Ben & Jerry's, but actually, we like the word that Caitlin used, regenerative, thriving. Think about this. If somebody asks you, hey, how's your marriage doing? Do you want to say it's sustainable? You'd rather say something, no, it's thriving. I don't know if you're going to use regenerative, but anyways. So the point is be open to learning and use that in your work. Now at Ben & Jerry's, we do this all the time where we look at our entire value chain, and you'll see our business model in just a second. And we think about the entire value chain, and Caitlin used the word prosperity. We actually have a model of linked prosperity. How can we create equitable prosperity throughout the entire value chain so that nobody and nothing, including the earth and the animals that are part of the agriculture, are exploited in any way? So we do things like fair trade, and we'll get into a little bit of that in just a bit. And also renewable energies. We know that some of the reports say that we only have 12 years left before we go over the cliff. Some of the research in agriculture says we only have 60 harvests left of healthy soil. So we have to get to work. So another word that you heard from Caitlin is action. And Greta Thunberg said it. The house is on fire, and we need to behave like that. And so at Ben & Jerry's, we are behaving like that. Technology. Think about technology. The social media, new technology, digital media, and just all of the technologies that we can put into our workplace and into our supply chains and elsewhere, really important, and we can really utilize it to accelerate what we need to do in our businesses. And keep a vision. Keep thinking about, wait a minute, what we did yesterday isn't really good enough for tomorrow, so what are we going to do today about that? So these are the things to think about as we go through this. Real quickly, this was the gas station that Jerry and his buddy Ben had just bought. It was only there, if anybody knows, it was in a street corner in Burlington, Vermont, right across from City Hall, where Bernie won his first election as mayor of Burlington back in 1980. Started in 1978. It was an old building. It really needed to be torn down, and it was in 1981. So in 1981, we moved into has anybody been to Burlington, Vermont? Oh, cool. Okay, so we now have a different location in Burlington, but this was the original location. Real quickly, as Caitlin said, Ben and Jerry could never hold a job or get to the graduate schools that they wanted to get to. So they said, we'll be our own business people. We'll be our own, we'll give ourselves our own job. And we just want to be a really good community-based business. We want to be connected to the community. We want to be engaged with the community. So early on, things were really simple. And I like to share this with especially small businesses. We didn't have any money in the early days. I mean, zero. The P&L was zero. And so on the first birthday, and actually Ben and Jerry always lament that they didn't even know if they were going to make it to their first birthday, but they did. And they said, we got to give something back to the community. And the only thing that they had at the time was ice cream. And so they scooped all day on the first birthday, scooped all day until all the ice cream was gone, and then they closed down. And that became our first free cone day, which we still celebrate to this day. That was the first vestige of this idea of giving back to the community. And by the way, it's usually in April now. Our birthday's in May, but it's usually in April now. So wherever you are, if there's a scoop shop, try to find one, because we do over 2 million scoops. By 1988, so we're going to race through history real quickly and get to contemporary work. In 1988, we were by then publicly traded on NASDAQ. So you could have had a scoop of the action, a share of Ben & Jerry's in 1988. And the board of directors and Ben and Jerry and the leadership at the time said, you know something, we've been doing this idea of a purpose-driven business, a socially responsible business for a long time now, and we need to write it down. So in 1988, we codified it with one of the first ever written missions that actually put a social mission and this idea of linked prosperity written into the mission. So what I love is that when you see this, and the leadership knew that we wanted product, economic, and social to be standing alongside of each other because they needed to work in harmony and in balance. If we had taken product and put it up here or social and put it down here, emotionally, psychologically, you're going to just say whatever's on top must be the most important. And they knew that. And so they said, no, we have to put these together because these three pillars will actually hold up the sustainable corporate concept of linked prosperity. And actually, this is the phrase that I love the most right here. This is 1988. You know, there are professors at Harvard and Cambridge, and they've been coming up in the 2000s, and there are a lot of movements talking about shared equity, shared value, linked prosperity. This is 1988, and we're already thinking about this. How can capitalism, by the way, whenever I'm at like a conservative business school, people will say, you're just a bunch of crunchy granola, hippies up in Vermont, a bunch of socialists. No, we're capitalists. But capitalism can have greedy side of capitalism where you exploit everything and just make money. And capitalism can be very intentional and thoughtful where you can actually create many benefits throughout. We'll have a couple of examples of that. And so that's what we do every day at Ben & Jerry's, headquartered in Vermont, but now we're in 38 countries around the world. Everybody there was given a gift by Ben & Jerry, and what the mission is how can we each write new pages in the history of this company with whatever we do, whether you're buying the toilet paper for headquarters or you're inventing a new flavor, how can you do that better? How can you do that with new resources? We'll go through some examples. Not many people know about this, but we also have a progressive value statement. And we wrote this in 1997, about 20 years into the business. And the reason was we needed to put some intellectual muscle on the preceding mission statement. And so I love this. This, to me, is a driving, guiding star for Ben & Jerry's. 1997, and we're writing things like, capitalism and the wealth that it produces does not create opportunity for everyone equally. We want to be a new model of business that brings people in from the economic margins, that creates an equitable model that's new and exciting, where everybody prospers along the value chain. And this was capitalism. So think about that. That's 1997. When was the Occupy movement? I can't remember, 2009, 10, 11, somewhere in there. And people were talking about the concentration of power and wealth. Ben & Jerry foresaw this early on. And so our progressive value statement talks about economic justice and social justice. It talks about really protecting the environment at a time when non-GMO was just coming into the marketplace. And one thing, people think Ben & Jerry's is kind of a Luddite society. We're not a Luddite society. We actually believe in technology. But technology that's unregulated and unfettered and kind of a Wild West show that can create unintended consequences is not something that we support. So we'll talk a little bit about GMO. Safe and sustainable food. Peace and justice. People say, well, what does an ice cream company have to do with peace and justice? And really, this is just a value that our co-founders fought for and love. They said that a world that's more peaceful is going to be a more prosperous world than a world that's at war and in conflict. And if we can put in economic systems that create more opportunities for more people to participate, there's going to be less stress. If people can send their kids to school, if people can feed their families, if people can have roofs over their houses all around the world, there's going to be less stress and less conflict. At least that's our theory. And then respecting people and the communities where we do business. And we do business globally, as you'll see in just a minute. So now, there's always this kind of refresh. Remember, it's like what you learn, kind of that feedback loop. Learn something, do something, learn again, and then adjust and keep going. So now the language that we're using in terms of our social mission is that we want to be a company that stands for human rights and dignity throughout our business. And every time we make a decision or we have a campaign, we want to think about how is that reflected in our business? How can we stand for social and economic justice all the way through our business with all the decisions? And there are many to make every year. And we need to be protecting the environment, but not only protecting it, we need to restore and regenerate that. If the UN report is true, that we only have 60 harvests left of healthy soil, then we need to get at it and start getting after some healthy soil. So the way we do this is we take those core values And we actually drive it right through the business. And we drive it through the communities where we're sourcing raw materials and suppliers, and where we're actually making the product, and the communities where we take the product, and how we engage throughout that entire cycle. So, where some will say, you're just a bunch of cause-related marketers. No, this is embedded in the business decisions. And again, we'll just do a few examples as we go through. So we have all sorts of ways to source ingredients. We source ingredients through social enterprises who create benefits and good in their communities, such as Rhino Foods that makes the cookie dough for chocolate chip cookie dough. And I think we're going to have some of that tonight. I think we're going to have chocolate chip cookie dough non-dairy vegan. So yeah, so we think about that too. And also Grayston Bakery, and we'll see a little bit of a case study in Grayston Bakery, which is just an awesome, awesome organization. Caring Dairy is a sustainable dairy program that looks at the entire ecosystem of the farm, the animals, the people, and the planet. Paperboard, Forest Stewardship Council paperboard for the packaging. We're also trying to look at one of the problems we have with packaging is, and I know we have a packaging person here, is we're a frozen food product that's wet. So there's got to be a laminate. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get it to a non-petrol based laminate that we can actually get to composting and recycling. So we're working on it, we're almost there. Fair trade, another interesting model that looks at social and economic justice and environmental stewardship. And cage-free and free-range eggs. By the way, if you come to our house, we do have the chickens. It's organic, free-range, cage-free, and it's about $100 a dozen. Also, we're a company, and this one I just share with you, we don't expect companies to take the position that we take. We're an activist company. We're actually registered lobbyists in Washington. We believe that companies are people in the community. So why should we leave our values outside the door when we get to work? So Ben and Jerry are activists, and you can see them. They've been arrested. Just a couple of years ago, they were arrested in Washington again. The point is to stand for your values. If you have values, stand for them. Speak up for them. And so we do. So, we're a certified B Corp. We actually have this nice phrase that we want to be a company that stands for justice in all its flavors. Kind of a cute marketing thing, but I like it. And we have campaigns that really speak to social and economic justice, that uphold our values. Now, I don't know if you know this, but we were publicly traded. And in the year 2000, Unilever, a global multinational, multi-brand company, put a bid in for all the shares of Ben & Jerry's. And then there was kind of a little bit of a moment there where there was kind of like some, what do they call it, hostile bids and so forth. And the board of directors at Ben & Jerry's thought it was their fiduciary responsibility to shareholders at the time to take the best offer, which was Unilever's. And so Unilever bought up all the shares. So basically, we're still a Vermont company, headquarters still in Vermont. We still make ice cream for all the US, and some we ship it elsewhere. We also make ice cream in Canada because of agricultural quotas. We make ice cream in the Netherlands for Europe. But the point is that there was a last bit of genius with the leadership. Ben & Jerry and the board of directors at the time spoke to Unilever. And this is a credit to Unilever, which if you don't know about Unilever, it's one of the most progressive multinationals in the world. Their CEO at the time went to Davos, where they have all these muckety-mucks that go there and, have pronouncements. And this CEO from Unilever went there and said, you know what? I'm not doing any more quarterly, shareholder reports because we have to stop thinking about the next quarter. We have to start thinking about the next decade. And I'm not going to do that anymore. And I was like, whoa, this guy was something else. He started a whole thing called the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan, which set real targets, game-changing targets, because Unilever is huge. It's global. Ben & Jerry's is just a small part, hopefully a part that is kind of like a catalyst or an enzyme inside the big engine. What was great was, in the acquisition agreement in 2000, it actually set up the forerunner of a super B Corp. So B Lab established the standards in 2007. This is the year 2000. And what we did was we worked out with Unilever to have an independent board of directors for Ben & Jerry's that owns the social mission and has authority and power over the social mission. And if Unilever takes us off mission, then that board can actually sue Unilever, which is a great kind of, poison pill detente? It's like nobody wanted that to happen. So Unilever owns the economic mission, and then, this is simplified, but they co-own the product mission. So it created this wonderful balance and a wonderful operational structure that kept Ben & Jerry's Ben & Jerry's. Now, I'm a pre-acquisition and a post-acquisition baby, and so I can tell you here, honestly, we do more now in the social mission than we've ever done in the history of the company. And people will say, really? Well, what's different? Something has to be different. What's a little different is maybe in the old days, we would take greater risk. We would just, we were like teenagers. And so, we'd jump out the second floor window, but we might sprain our ankle. Now, what we do is we have a little bit more maturity. With Unilever, we have to write more memorandum, and we have to get more approvals as we go up the ladder. But what that does is it creates a sense of planning and operational maturity, where actually it's kind of liberated us to do more throughout our business than ever before. So we embed these core values, and when it comes to our employees, the idea is when you're an employee at Ben & Jerry's, you have to think about whether you're in IT or the design. We have a creative design group, research and development, manufacturing, social mission, finance, wherever you are. How do these three core values work through your business and your business decisions? If you're hiring an outside consultant, can you do that in a way that actually is more equitable and increases the pool, so there might be more diversity and inclusion in that decision? So we have personal development plans where everybody at Ben & Jerry's, we call them 3+1s. 3 plus 1 development goal that you have. And the idea is to have a goal for each one of these. Actually, I've got to translate this into product, economic, and social. And the social would have these 3 in there too. So that's one of the ways that we start to embed and drive this through the business and through the employees, where they're actually choosing goals each year for product, social, and economic. And the social mission, you'd start looking at, well, how can we manifest some of these in the way I do my job? So climate change, yes, we're an ice cream company, and yes, we freeze products. And many people would say, that's a little bit contradictory to, the warming climate, isn't it? Well, you can do things. And we actually, we were campaigning globally when we got to Paris in 2015, COP21, which was the big one where they were signing that global agreement. It was lovely too, because that meeting was in December of that year. So we could start a campaign in January of that year and build momentum around the world to encourage our leaders to get to Paris and have a real strong policy agreement. Now, if you're going to be out there talking the talk, here's the other lesson. You need to walk the walk, So what we did was we said, okay, what are the global experts asking us to do as communities, individuals, companies, and so forth? And they said we need to know where the carbon is, and we need to put a price on our carbon. So Ben & Jerry's said, okay, let's find out about that. We did a life cycle analysis of our product. We found out that there's about 3.3 pounds of carbon equivalent in a pint of Ben & Jerry's. And where that carbon is right here. This blue line, that's a dairy farm right there. Okay, this next blue line, that's the rest of agriculture. Sugar, cocoa, banana, vanilla. So we said, all right, we know where the carbon is. It's on the farms. We don't own the farms. So we're going to have a collaborative, multi-stakeholder approach. We're going to have to create incentives on how to do this. So we set some goals. We looked at what the world community was doing, and there's this thing called, I don't know if anybody's familiar with this, the Science-Based Target Initiative. Just nod have you heard that? Okay. The Science-Based Target Initiative is a group of NGOs that have established ways and standards where, as companies or organizations, we can establish science-based targets to reduce our carbon. So Ben & Jerry's is actually one of the few companies that has had approved science-based targets. These are them. We're going to be 100% renewable in our scope 1 and 2, if you're familiar with that language. By 2025, we're almost there already. We're going to decrease the intensity, that 3.3 pounds or 1.6 kilograms, if you like that. Our person from across the pond, by the way, he should get a free pint for crying out loud, right? Can somebody get this to that guy over there? Yeah, just, and you got to use it before you leave the country. It's good in all 50 states, but once you leave the country, it's no good. You're welcome. So we need to decrease that 3.3 pounds by 2025 by 40% and 80% by 2050. Now, if we have any mathematicians in the room, you might have thought, there's something wrong with this equation, because the world's experts say that we have to decrease our carbon 80% absolute by 2050. This is an intensity goal, which means, okay, well, we'll reduce it 80% within a pint, but we're going to be making more pints. So we're adding, so our absolute footprint is still a challenge. So we're very honest about that. We got to figure that out. And that's where we're looking for innovation in terms of technology and systems. How can we do this where we can actually get to an absolute footprint? Now, one of the things that we have done is we're growing the company through plant-based products. So we have a non-dairy product. That non-dairy product is literally half the carbon footprint of the dairy product. So it's about 1.6 pounds of carbon to the 3.3 pounds of carbon. So we can grow the company at a lower carbon footprint, but we still have a carbon footprint that we have to figure out. So these are the goals that we're going after. And remember I said we put a fee on our carbon. So what we do, it's kind of a cost of goods supply chain fee. So we have $10 per metric ton. We know how many metric tons we have. So we have $10 per metric ton for our US manufacturing, and we have €10 per metric ton for our European manufacturing. We put that into a pool of money, and that pool of money only goes to projects that actually reduce the carbon within our supply chain. And I'm not talking about buying carbon offsets, which is a good thing. That's a good thing to do. And I'm really happy that we did with the travel and all that kind of stuff. That's important. But we're talking about how do we reduce the carbon on the dairy farm? We can with animal agriculture, and cows have gotten a bad rap with this climate change thing. With animal agriculture, with integrated agriculture, you can actually inset carbon on the farm. But we have to get there, and we have to get there fast. Speaking of which, good cue, the farm. So we looked at the whole ecosystem of the farm. Animal welfare, the workers, the farm worker, the farmer family, energy, soil health and fertility, soil loss. And we said, let's put standards in each one of these indicators, and we're going to ask our farmers to meet those standards. And if they do, we've got to support them to do that, because I don't know if you're following this, and I don't expect you to. Family dairy farming in the US is an endangered business model. They're going out of business left and right. It's actually scary. What's happening is there's consolidation, and we're moving towards this industrial style of agriculture, which is not sustainable in any way, shape, or form. When you get to monocropping, monoculture, and you get these big CAFOs with all the animals and everything, what you're doing is the soil is just getting poisoned to death, and there's no health left in the soil. There's no nutrients in that corn. It's just, starch and energy. So we're saying we've got to create standards that are more on the regenerative agriculture, that keep the animals healthy, the soil healthy, and it starts with the soil, and the livelihoods dignified for the farm workers and the farmers. So if they meet these standards, we kind of have like bronze, silver, and gold levels. If the farmers meet the basic level, which is hard to meet, we pay them more. If they meet the silver level, we pay them even more. If they meet the gold level, we pay them even more. So we work with about 70 or so farms directly in Vermont. Again, all of our manufacturing for the US is in Vermont and these farms. We do also have a similar program in the Netherlands for that European production. Last year, we paid over $4.3 million in direct premiums on top of what we paid for the dairy. So we're putting our money where our mouth is. But here's the most important thing. Those economic incentives create new achievements and outcomes on the farms. So we're actually elevating the sustainability of those farms. We saved 30 tons of topsoil in this program over the last few years. That's important because if topsoil is going, here's a way we can save topsoil and keep it healthy. We actually decreased by, now I'm going to have a senior moment. I do have my AARP card. I think it was like 2 million pounds of synthetic, like herbicides and fertilizers. Didn't use them, didn't need to, because we were doing things like cover cropping, crop rotations that gets that healthy soil. So you don't need to put poisons on the soil. It's just healthy agriculture. So the point is by paying the farmers more, which helps them economically, you create a value-add product, really good dairy that you could sell in the marketplace, but you're also creating sustainable farms at the same time. A win-win-win. Social enterprise. So we not only buy raw materials, but we buy finished goods. So we buy brownies from a place called the Grayson Bakery in Yonkers, New York. Now, we could just go out and buy brownies from anybody. We could just go buy it from, Kraft or Nabisco or whatever, and just get a whole bunch of brownies at cost. Because really, supply chain, you really just want to get the most, best, at the least, most reliable. But we want to make sure that our sourcing has a values component driven into it. We call it values-led sourcing. And so we found the Grayston Bakery, and the Grayston Bakery said, you know what? If you come to our door and sign up, we don't care who you were, we care who you are. You don't need a resume. You don't even need a past. You could have just gotten out of jail. You could be sleeping on the street. You could have just gotten over some substance abuse issues. You could have dropped out of high school. Don't care. You sign up, you stick with us, you show up. If you're reliable, we'll hire you. And they hire them to bake brownies. I love their line. If you can't see it, it says, we don't hire people to bake brownies. We bake brownies to hire people. This is what I love. If I were at anybody from the Wharton School here? Awesome. One time people were asking me about this welfare state that Ben & Jerry's is supporting at the Wharton School, and they're lovely. It was actually a great conference. But what happens is people get wrong what Ben & Jerry's is doing. It's not a socialist welfare state. It's capitalism done well. Over the 30 years that we've been working with Grayston, we've created 3,500 jobs for people who could not get a job, which means they are off the welfare roll and they're on the payroll. They're paying, rent. They're buying food. They're circulating in the economy. Ooh, look at that. Did I go flying by things? I was so excited. But also and actually I think this number is up a little bit more. I have 5 minutes. I'm going to blast through this. Fasten your seatbelts. $65 million in payroll, and now I think it's about $70 million in payroll. So my point is by buying brownies from Grayston, we've created a ripple effect benefit in that community. And Grayston is part of a foundation that actually helps 19,000 families in that community with counseling, childcare, housing, and all sorts of things. So think about this. That's just choosing a brownie for an ice cream flavor. Think about our businesses. How can we do this where you can create these ripple effects throughout the business? In fair trade, real quickly, same thing. We looked at where we get our coffee, Mexico, sugar from Belize, banana from Ecuador, cocoa from Cote d'Ivoire, vanilla from both Uganda and Madagascar, almonds from Palestine. These are all fair trade certified. We mapped that supply chain and we thought, how can we work in these supply chains to actually create the thing that we were looking at before, which was dignified life for farmers, where they actually make a living, sustainable income for cocoa, sugar, banana, vanilla. And we're going after that. And then we looked at the social equity of the business. Is Ben & Jerry's the inclusive, diverse kind of company we think we are? We found out several years ago, no, we're not. We were actually a very white company in a very white state, Vermont. So he said, how are we going to change that? So we invited in experts who work in the field of human rights and civil rights. And we had a town hall, and we just listened. We said, what do we not even know to ask ourselves? And they told us. And so we had a whole plan, and we started working with external people on campaigns for better policy and voting rights, economic rights, criminal justice reform. We started working through our supply chain to make sure that there's equitable principles in our supply chain and that we execute them. And also, how can we work to really create systems change with other companies, government, nonprofit, civil society? How can we combine together to create the collaborations that will actually create a sustainable, equitable, diverse, and inclusive world? We're all living in the same world together. Let's see if we can create something special. So we have a lot of campaigns. I won't go through all of them. One last thing, and this is, we do want to know about some of the mistakes. I mean, anybody from the Navy here, do you know what a shakedown cruise is? It's when you get a new ship and you go out and you do a shakedown cruise and you find out, whoa, there's some parts of this ship we need to kind of tighten up. So that happens all the time at Ben & Jerry's. So one example of where we kind of went over the line. Last October, we came out with Pecan Resist. Pecan Resist was to counter the ugly, racist, bullying rhetoric that we heard out of Washington. And we said, we want this flavor to support women's rights, human rights, immigrant rights, and climate justice. And we got a lot of feedback. We got a lot of criticism because, and ironically, it wasn't from Trump supporters. It was from other people that saw the Women's March and immigrant rights and all these things. They saw them differently. And so we learned a lot. We listened. Again, we listened to people and said, well, why? Where is the tension point? Why don't you believe in the Women's March? And it came down to some of the leaders of the Women's March were identified as being anti-Semitic and other things. And then we tried to understand, well, what was going on there? So we had to go through a long discovery process of why this campaign in some ways was a great success, but in some ways was a real tension point and a real flashpoint for us. So it was always good to, again, it's that loop where you do something and then you learn by it and then you adjust going forward. And then we measure and report. We have our own scorecard and we report publicly, transparently, warts and all, where we did well, where we didn't, and what we're going to do about it. And we are a certified B Corp. We were actually the first wholly owned company to become a certified B Corp back in 2012, and we've been going ever since. So, ladies and gentlemen, pick your thank you, and that's it. Did I do it? Yeah. Okay. Want this one?
You're going to keep that one.
Keep it.
Thank you. Yeah. You guys, this on? Hello?
1 second. Standing by.
Good morning. Very interesting talk. You've mentioned the impact of farming. I'm very interested in your thought about some of the new company that we see, like Perfect Day, that is using cow's DNA in lab.
Mm-hmm.
Very interested in your point of view on that.
We're actually looking at that. We're trying to understand the basis of that technology and how it's used and what some of the consequences might be or benefits of that. So we actually don't have a point of view at this time as we speak. However, we are looking at it. We've invited entrepreneurs in that are actually doing this work, creating, there's a dairy DNA that people who are lactose intolerant, there could be an ice cream made from a dairy enzyme or whatever, that they could, and I've actually tasted some of the test product, it's pretty good. But we're trying to, again, understand the implications of it. So we're looking at it, and we're very aware of what's going on out there. So it's a great question.
Back here.
In the back.
Hi, Rob.
Hello.
I just want to tell you that if it wasn't for you, this room might be empty. I'll tell you why. About 10 years ago, I came out and visited you. I was taking classes at Green Mountain College. They were the first one to to have a degree in sustainability.
Mhm.
So I took the executive program and came to Burlington. While I was there, I went around and saw a number of Vermont companies. And you brought me into your office, and the CEO of the company, we talked for about an hour and a half that day. And you said, asked me about my background. I told you I'd started a couple of companies in the pet industry. And both you and the CEO encouraged me to maybe go into our industry and started to green it up like you guys have done. So look at the impact
That's
you have
awesome.
created. And my point in telling you this is, number one, to thank you, but also maybe to inspire some other people to go ahead and go out and do something similar. And as far as the future, the impact we're continuing to make here, now that we've got the pet industry sustainability coalition up and running and in the able hands of Caitlin, I'm taking this model that we built over 6 years, and I'm bringing it into the regenerative agriculture world, the natural products world, healthcare, and that's what I spend most of my time on now, spreading this sort of thing that you help inspire us to do around the world. And I met your CEO of Unilever, Pullman,
Yeah.
along with Hunter Lovins, who are very good friends, and she'll be here later this week. We're all in Paris for the climate talk together. Caitlin and I have gone to New York City and participated in the People's Climate March and women's marches and stuff. So I just want to tell you, Rob, that I really appreciate you taking the time 10 years ago to inspire me.
Well, thank you. That is awfully nice. You were kind and generous. And like I said, pet people, they're good people. But you know what? That's a testament to you, because you took the time and the innovation and the courage to actually visit, think about it, and drive it forward. And that's what we all need to do. We all need to have that collaboration. And again, I put the word courage, because I'll even tell you, when I'm bringing stuff forward internally at Ben & Jerry's, you know, we're like any community. There are going to be people that are very conservative and risk averse. And there are going to be people who want to take all the risk in the world, you know, and just kind of leap across that cavern, right? I'm the latter. But the point is that we have to have the courage, and we have to make those connections, whether you're introverts or extroverts. Make those connections, and so this is a great forum for that. But really, that's a testament to you, so thank you. That was very nice.
Just one quick comment, by the way. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's inspiring, your story, and I just want to make a comment that our company is a $10 billion company that sells ingredients to production agriculture and all that. We just launched Clean Cow, which is reduced, I don't know if you've heard about this, but it reduces the methane emissions by 25% or more, and it has a direct impact on CO2 emissions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think together, this is the kind of thing is that we're growing our business based on sustainability and being responsible for the planet. And so it's nice to see that this is all working together. And since it's one of your biggest impacts from a carbon standpoint, it just shows you how collaboration will work to help and really get things in alignment and be able to progress as businesses. So.
Are you doing that through nutrition?
Yeah, it's actually like it's an enzyme. What's it? Yeah, it's a molecule. So we've been working on this project for over 5 years or more, and just launched it. So we expect to have a pretty large impact on the whole methane emission from the dairy industry.
Cool, great,
Yeah.
that's great.
Good morning and thank you. I work in packaging and recycling, and I know you talked about working on a more recyclable container. I was hoping you could talk about, I hear from a lot of companies that packaging is what they hear about from consumers. Like that's the touch point, that's the point that bothers them. But clearly your data shows it's not your biggest impact. So I'm wondering if you can talk about the struggles of connecting to what the consumers want you to work on versus what your data shows you should be working on, and how to kind of communicate your impacts on both spaces.
That is a great question, and my answer might surprise you a little bit. We almost flip that. And what we do is we say, what are the values and initiatives that we're trying to accomplish, and where does that connect with the values of our customers? So it's kind of the inverse. In a way, what you were describing is that external in, connecting with you, like, what are you interested? Okay, I get it. Okay, we'll figure out how to connect that. Instead, we say, what are we interested in? And it's not a narcissistic point of view. It's that our founders started a business that wanted to represent human rights, social and economic justice, environmental stewardship. So we're saying, what are we going to do? And where are we going to find those people who share those values, and how are we going to connect that way? And the way we've been doing it over time, some of it's very traditional, event marketing, just go out and connect and scoop ice cream and be places. We work with NGOs that might represent, they might be the experts representing. Real quick example, we're working on criminal justice reform right now. And so we went out and found who are the thought leaders and the leaders of changing criminal justice reform, because we've been really concerned about, and it's really kind of a co-founder's thing, we've been really concerned about the inequity in our societies. In the US, it is truly about systemic and institutionalized racism, and it's manifested in all these kind of root causes in the system. So we went out and we found a couple of organizations. One is called Color of Change, and they represent kind of a broad theme about civil rights and human rights. And another one's called the Advancement Project. And the Advancement Project has been really working on this whole prison industrial complex that is an outgrowth, and we don't have time to go into the details and the layers of this, but it is an outgrowth of slavery and the way we built the US. So with the Advancement Project and Color of Change, we figured out how to have a campaign on social media, our website, Twitter, Facebook, and all that. And we started to go out and connect with people who shared those values and try to create a very civil discussion. Not one that's angry, not one that's, it's a civil discussion like, hey, come on in, let's have some ice cream, let's talk about this. So it's a little bit of a different take on the question. We kind of do it inside out instead of outside in. Not that either way is bad. I mean, there are some really good ways that, my customers are concerned about this, I want to connect that way. That's a good way to go too. And we do it a little bit differently. In Europe, we're actually working on refugee asylum and resettlement. And when you're talking about criminal justice reform and refugee resettlement, these are tension points. These are hot button items. And here we are, Home Sweet Honeycomb is a flavor that's talking about how can we, how can we give people safe haven? How can we include them in the community and the economy? And then here, right now we have, we just came out with it, Justice Remixed. Just came out. It's really spicy. I don't know if we're going to have it here tonight. It's cool. But the Justice Remixed flavor is talking about the criminal justice reform. So we do try to use our channels. Our channels are the packaging. It's a great medium and storytelling. And then we connect the dots. And hopefully with a good flavor, it can actually become part of the regular lineup and not just the limited edition, which a lot of them are. But they could become part of the regular lineup.
So Ben and Jerry's clearly started with a social mission to begin with, but for companies who maybe were founded and didn't have a social mission, have you seen, what's the best practices to help bring that about? And then also, have you seen any great examples of seeing that change from a company that wasn't a B Corp to become a B Corp?
I think start small. Start small in what's relevant to what you do. So if it's in the pet industry or think about, okay, well where are the different connections? And again, it might be on any part of that social, economic, and environmental spectrum, and pick something. So I'll give you an example. I mean, this is, we started in 1978, so this is many decades of building on something. When we first started dairy, the two criteria that we thought were socially responsible were, are you a family farm? One criteria. And do you not use recombinant bovine growth hormone on your herds? And that was it. Those were the two metrics. And then over time, we built in more animal welfare, more labor welfare, more soil health. And we just built that over time. So we've gone through many iterations. That program that I showed you, that's actually, it's gone through pilot, scale up, phase 1, phase 2, and now we're working on phase 3 over decades. So start small, figure out where the relevance is in your business. So if you source ingredients or if you're a service or whatever, figure out, well, where are those connections? And then just pick one thing and just work on that, see how it goes. Tinker with it, and then adjust it, and then make it better over time. That's the suggestion I would give.
All right, I think that'll have to be the last of our questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Rob.
All right, thank you. All right.